Chair.
So good morning and welcome to our virtual meeting of the Governance Council Operation Committee. We will begin the meeting with the City Clerk calling the roll call in attendance for today's meeting.
So Chair Fortini is present. Councillor Medeiros is currently not present. Councillor Vicente?
I'm here.
Thank you. Councillor Dillon?
I think he's can't hear.
Okay, Councillor Dillon, I do see you in the chat box. Maybe Jennifer, can you reach out to Councillor Dillon? He's having some trouble connecting with his microphone, please. Councillor Williams?
I'm here.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, you do have quorum. You have 4 members present.
Okay, thank you. I see Councillor Dillon can't hear for some reason.
Yes, Mr. Chair. So IT is going to reach out to him and just see if we can connect his audio and his speakers and his microphone.
It's been resolved. Great. So our next item is, the next item is approval of the agenda. Does any member wish to add a business item on today's meeting? If so, please use the chat function and add your name to the speakers list. Seeing none. Okay. There are no more. There are no additions to the agenda. We have a motion moved by Councillor Vicente. All in favor? Yes. Dillon, sorry, Councillor Dillon wants to confirm that. Okay, he's on now. That's good. Great. So to move on. Okay. Instead of seeking a recorded vote on this item, I will ask there anyone oppose the motion. Otherwise, the vote will be counted informative. Thank you. Thank you. There are no objections. Okay. The motion carries. Moved by Councillor Medeiros.
Councillor Medeiros is present now.
Yeah, he's present. Thank you. So 3. So do any members have any declaration of pecuniary interest under the Municipal Act? If any, matter to be considered on today's agenda? Okay, please note the clerk will note of this meeting minutes. Seeing none. Okay, so we'll start off with staff report on the council expenses. That's 8.1. On the expense consultant fees. So the staff's going to do a presentation on it. Or do any members have any questions or comments regarding the staff report? If so, please use the chat function and add your name to the speakers list. So we see Councillor Shemaine Williams. Go ahead, Councillor Shemaine Williams, you're on.
Oh, thank you. Is the staff going to provide an overview of the report, or we're not doing that? We can just go right into questions?
Sure, through the chair. So the report essentially is providing an update to the previous council request or the referred matter. There are 2 essential main changes from the referred matter. One was the prohibition on the use of consultants, so that language has been added. There was a small tweak to the reporting timelines, and then the only other change that was made was with respect to use of service providers, because there was a bit of clarity requested previously in terms of which service providers may be permissible. So that language has been added, and the policy was attached as an appendix to the report with the track changes on in terms of the changes that were made.
Okay, thank you. So through the chair, I have a few questions to ask with regards to the change to the expense policy. And so my first question is, when did we get the first motion to change the councillor policy come to governance?
Through the chair, it was, I believe, the original motion was back at the November 4th Council Governance Committee motion, which was subsequently approved by Council on November 20th.
November 20th. And that was, we received a it was after that we received a motion, received a report that was outlining that to make our expense policy comparable to other municipalities. That came in November, or that came after?
That came in November. That led to the freeze on the use of consultants, through the chair. And then in February, the council kind of maintained that freeze and requested the prohibition on the use of consultants be added to the policy. So that happened at the February 3rd meeting.
So I do recall that in February we got the report, and it looked at other municipalities and said that, other municipalities basically use their budget to their discretion to find the best ways to reach their residents. Is that correct?
I think the report through the chair back in February just highlighted what the City of Toronto did, and because that was the original motion from November, and the report just spoke to what the City of Toronto policy had included in there.
Right, so Toronto allows consultants, so we were saying, Brampton could allow consultants as well if we want to make it the same as other municipalities, and so on and so forth. So so now we have the recommendation in the report that we not have consultants at all, but we can have event planners.
Through the chair, yes. I think at the February meeting, I believe Councillor had requested a little bit of clarity around some of those types of other service providers, and that those should be allowed. And so staff have kind of updated the policy to reflect the discussion that happened at the February meeting.
Okay. So to not use consultants and to come back and, it just seems a bit restrictive to me, more than before, especially after, staff did come back and tell us, provide your expertise on the best practices in other municipalities. And so to have a change now to not allow consultants, I just think it's the direction. I think we're going in the opposite direction. To restrict the ways that current councillors can connect and reach their constituents, but it's going to really also restrict how it's done in the future too for other councillors. And so, when you look at other municipalities, like Mississauga, thousands are spent on communication, and it's up to the discretion of the councillor to be able to do what they feel they need is best according to what the residents want. And I just think it's a little, I think we're going in the opposite direction here in Brampton. And so the mayor's office, to the staff, or through the chair to the staff, the mayor's office uses consultants, is that correct?
Through the chair, yes.
And city staff uses consultants as well, is that correct?
Through the chair, yes.
Is the use of consultants contrary to the Municipal Act?
Through the chair, to my understanding, no.
No, it's
But
not.
That's my understanding from a finance perspective.
Okay, all right. So, but we're taking it out of a councillor's ability to use consultants. I'm just trying to figure out what's really going on here. I'm going to just yield some of my questions. I don't know if other councillors have any other questions or any other thoughts about this. But I just don't think I could support the amendments in this policy. I think residents need us to be in touch with their councillors. So that's why we have the ability to use our budget in the best way we can to reach our residents. And using consultants can definitely amplify that and make it possible. So I have to ask, what's really going on here when we are choosing to change policies to restrict that? Voting has consequences to me, and I think that is the empowerment of those they elect to serve them. And we are provided a budget each year. That budget is transparent and available for all residents to see. I think councillors should just stay within it. And so I'm not in favor of further red tape and stifling communication. So I can't support an amendment to further restrict councillors from doing their job and reaching the residents in the city of Brenton. So I'm just going to see if my other colleagues have anything to say and yield my comments further. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Shemaine. I have a couple of questions as a chair. So we put a stop to the consultants going back in November. Am I correct?
Through the chair, I think the original, I'm just trying to kind of bring that up. So November 4th, 2019, during the Council Governance Committee, there was a motion that was subsequently approved by City Council on November 20th that payment of any outstanding invoices for consulting services submitted to the city accounts payable by 2:20 p.m. November 20th be paid and any beyond this time not be undertaken pending the review, and that such existing invoices be provided to committee and the public upon request. That was the specific resolution.
As of November, and that consultant was paid in full as of November 4th.
Based on those invoices received to that date.
Mississauga does not have any consultants, the councillors. And when we go to special events, we have our own special event here at the city. Am I correct? So we don't need it on our expenses. Right. Another one is, I wrote it down here. So our consultants that we hire from outside, do they have to follow the code of the policy that we have? Under the code of ethics, let's say.
Through the chair, I again, from a finance perspective, based on my experience, I would say yes, but again, I would have HR comment on specific policies and procedures.
We don't hire these consultants, and after, if we make a decision going against them, they go back on the social media and start bad-mouthing us. I think they're more professional on stuff like that. So, you know, my thing is, so if we put this freeze on these consultants, and I'm going through these financials, and I notice there's more consultants being paid, how did these consultants get paid? As of November, these were paid in April. So it says here, more consultants was paid to Rob Davis and Associate, another $15,264 plus another $300. And this was done in April, when we put a freeze on in November. So how did this slip through the cracks?
Through the chair, that was a payment for a penalty for a cancellation of the agreement with the consultant.
But regarding, I remember we went in camera and we talked about that, if there was any penalties, and we put a froze as of November 4th. And if there was any penalties, it shouldn't have to have nothing to do with us as a city. This is taxpayers' money here. And we said no consultant, but we still keep paying, plus we pay them interest. So I don't get it. Like, I find it very difficult, you know, when that council resolution was loud and clear, saying no more consultants, and something was paid after we said no. You know, like we put this budget together, you know, it's mostly for office expense and our payroll for their employees, but if we start doing outside and start using taxpayers' money for consultants and all, I think, you know, I just find it weird, that very upsetting that when we already paid to over $21,000 in consulting fees going back in October all the way to November, then November 4th, we did say no more, just pay them the outstanding, that's invoiced. And as of that day at 2:30, there was no other invoices. And then we go back in April of this year, and we pay again another almost $15,200 plus interest too. Well, that's $15,500 and something, paid again to the same consultant. And this is only one councillor doing that. So how did staff go against council resolution? What's the sense of having a council resolution and then we still do it anyway? You know? Anyway. I got a couple more, one more councillor back on the board. Councillor Charmaine Williams.
Thank you. Through the chair. So when a contract is canceled, is there cancellation fees that usually have to be paid out? That's to staff?
Through the chair, it would depend on what is specified in the contract. Every contract is specific and unique. It's hard for staff to make a general comment.
So, but usually when you cancel something before the time that was agreed upon, there's usually a penalty for cancellations. Is that correct?
Through the chair, again, it would depend on the terms of the contract.
Well, I think all of us have signed contracts before. Usually, when you cancel a contract before it's time, you either have to pay out the remainder of the contract or there's a fine or a penalty. I think many of our residents have either been in those situations or either had to read the terms of a contract. And there's usually, in protection of a business, there's usually cancellation stipulations if people do that. So, when we cancel contracts, you usually have to be aware that there may be some consequences and then interest. And so I think we have to be aware. At the end of the day, our residents elected us to do a job. And it is up to the counselor's discretion. And it should be up to the counselor's discretion on how to use the budget and making sure that you stay within it. And I think it's very important to remember that, when we all work actively to do our job the best way we can and reach our residents, when the residents are very thankful for the amount of communication that comes out, and when the residents are saying, finally, I'm actually knowing who my counselor is, I think it's a good thing. And I think we should all be supportive and encouraging each one of us to do our jobs the best that we can. And so, I want to encourage all of us to remember that we all are counselors for our own community, and that's what our residents elected us to do, which is to do a job and to reach them and to communicate with them, and to make sure that we are keeping them abreast and aware of the issues that are happening in the city. So I do fully value and appreciate the work that staff has been doing. I think it's unfortunate we spent a lot of time discussing this, especially when other municipalities do it as well, and we're not in violation of a municipal act. And so I just think we have to ask what's really going on here. What is really going on here? Are we using our ability to reach our residents because it's what's right and that's what the residents want us to do, or are we just really using our political power and muscles to try and prevent other councillors from doing their job, which is, I think it's unfortunate. So I always ask, what's really going on here? And so hopefully we can move on from this and just continue to do our jobs and reach our residents. And that's what I will continue to do every single day. So thank you.
Consultants. That was one thing. Second of all, we did ask for a contract at the time. There was no contract provided to us when we went in camera. So now all of a sudden there's a contract. We did ask for it at the time, and no contract was ever provided to us.
Point of order.
So, Councillor,
I don't know.
Martin
Point of order.
Medeiros?
I think that's clarification on that. I don't think a contract was ever requested. A contract was created. We never signed. No resident would want us to sign any kind of agreement without or agree to anything without contract. And when it was requested, a contract was provided to finance.
We're going to stop. We did ask, I remember at the time, for a contract. Okay, Councillor Martin Medeiros.
Thank you, through chair.
Sorry.
Yes, hello?
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think there's several things here at play which I'm confused about. It almost seems like it's Groundhog Day again, and it seems like we've come full circle on a fulsome debate that we had already, if I recall, last year. And so my understanding, what were my takeaways from the previous council meeting? And maybe City Clerk, you can correct me if I'm wrong, based on the minutes. We had provided direction to staff through a motion that no further payments would be made. Yet we discovered today that payments were made, regardless if they're justified, not justified, regardless if they will help democracy, get us closer to our residents, et cetera, et cetera. That is not, for me, the concern. The concern is there was a motion moved by the committee, approved by council in its minutes, direction given to our treasurer at the time, and acknowledgement that no further payments would be made as of this date. And if I recall, we were actually were sympathetic, and we actually were level-headed, and we were actually we instead of going back and make sure there was any backtracking, we felt that sure there must have been a misunderstanding. Again, we talked about all this stuff that I don't want to raise again. We talked about that maybe there was misunderstanding what the purpose and intent of that bucket of consultation services were. We've simply said if you wanted to hire, I guess this counselor in question, if she wanted to hire the employee, that just hire him and let it come under that employment bucket, that he had access to confidential information, access to email, access to the work floor, workspace, in an area which was only deemed for our employees. So that was the whole breadth of the discussion. And I'm not here today to say, again, have A, B, or C work for you. It just has to have under a bucket. But we gave direction. So, City Clerk, can you, in fact, confirm that there was direction given to the treasurer in the form of a motion that no further payments would be made?
Through you, Mr. Chair, there was in earlier this year, and it's as has been pointed out by Finance, it's been quite a history of a conversation at this committee on this. The prohibition that Council put in place was on the use of consultants. Subsequent to that, there was a contract, and the understanding that we have is the contract was ended. And ending the contract, there was a penalty, and the penalty had to be paid. And the corporation made the decision to pay the penalty to honor that portion of a contract that was executed.
But the further monies which were given, that was not approved. That goes against council's direction and motion.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to my knowledge, and Finance may be able to correct me on this, is there's been no use of consultants since that resolution carried in February of this year, I believe.
Through the chair, correct.
Okay, so I'm confused. I thought at the time, and maybe one of my colleagues, is that when we said clean up, give the whatever payment was as of this date, and we had sureties from our treasurer that and I don't recall the exact date, that there would be no further payments and so on. And so what staff are telling us is that they followed the resolution and no further payments were made after we gave that resolution. So is that my understanding?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's my understanding as well, Councillor, in terms of use of consultants, yes.
Okay, so no further has been done then, and no future ones are going to be done. So we have, right now, as of today, we can't go out and hire consultants for that purpose in which we specify that we shouldn't be using.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's my understanding as well.
Okay. So I guess then from city staff's perspective, I guess when the dates gets posted and the information, which is, because it's very limited information on our financials in terms of what that service is or what the service wasn't. But as long as we're assured that this doesn't go forward, and because my understanding was that when we made that resolution resolution wasn't followed, as that there was post-dated payments. And that's my confusion. But you're telling me that speaks to the pre-dates which we established during that motion. So based on that, then I'm fine with that perspective. And again, unless one of my colleagues can sort of raise that, my understanding that it wasn't, but staff have said that no further payments have been made and no further payments will be made, then I'm fine with that then. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Medeiros. And I remember, you're absolutely right. It would have been nice if staff said there was a contract when we asked. And said, hey, this is still this, because of that day at 2-something, we said no more consultant fees. And if we would have been told there was a contract, we probably want to pay the outstanding right till November 4th. We figured, I was one, if someone did the work, should be paid. But nobody knew there was going to be a penalty. No, we were never told. And so all of a sudden, this, and they all sign, we all have our assistants here. They have to obey by certain rules and all. We have an outside consultant being paid and then, doing media really and stuff against us. Like, I just don't get how this functions. For me, it's very unacceptable. I'm going to bring forward, since we're talking about expenses, I'm going to bring, Mr. Clerk, 9.1 ahead. Since we're doing through the expenses, is that okay?
Through you, Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
that's fine.
And that
Just to
way
let
we'll
you know,
just
Councillor Visante is on the list as well.
Yeah, it's on the list anyway. And then another thing, so when we're going back on the expenses, and we start using Facebook, to boost our Facebook, and we're using our taxpayers' money to promote ourselves, and you do negative stuffs against the city on Facebook. You know, $97, $92. There's tons of money on here for boosting Facebook. So how does that happen? $61, $71, $102. We have our own social media. Meanwhile, if I do Facebook and I boost it, I pay out of my pocket. We should not be using city expense to promote Facebook to bash other councillors and bash us on taxpayers' money. So we have to look at these type of policies. This should not be allowed on Facebook and Twitter. We have our own corporate account. Am I correct, Mr. Clerk?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'll start, and maybe, I think Jason's on this call, he can,
Yep.
there is a corporate Facebook account.
Right.
I think some members may have their own Facebook accounts as well,
Right.
as they do Twitter accounts and other social media.
Yeah, and I do the same, and I'm sure every councillor does, but we cannot use our personal Facebook and Twitter account when we can't even use that for elections, but it's okay for us to pay to boost it. And there's $62, $71, so the $15, $100, $102, $61 to boost personal Facebook. So this is taxpayers' money. There's limits what we should be doing on this, and I'm getting questions on it. People are calling me, how we got social media, people going on social media saying we're high spenders. Meanwhile, they don't look at where we're spending the money. And if I give something to Big Brother, Big Sister, or breast cancer, it's a good cause. I'm allowed to do that. But I'm not going to start paying taxpayers' money to consultant or boost Facebook and Twitter out of their money. So I got called, Councilor Vicente on the line. Next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, an interesting conversation around consultants here at this committee. It does feel like Groundhog Day, Councillor Medeiros. And so we did make a very clear decision that as a matter of due course, that we did not feel that members of council having the opportunity to engage with an external consultant to do their work, do their public engagement, wherein that individual is not subject to the same level of code of conduct that members of council and their staff are required to follow. So that was a very critical point and an important factor in our decision here. And let's be very clear that we stated very clearly that we felt that consultants should not be permitted, particularly for that reason. With respect to payments of contractual obligations, it's true that every person out there knows very well what it is like to have a contract. We have all signed agreements in one form or another, and we do understand we understand that penalties can sometimes apply. But as members of the board of a corporation of the city of Brampton, an individual member of council does not have authority to bind the corporation. And that is a very important concept in contractual law, that you as a member of council can't write a contract that would later on impose a penalty on, in this case, the city of Brampton, which then staff feel they are under obligation to pay. If, for example, I were to write a contract with someone external, and the result of default of that contract means that I exceed my council budget, am I then expecting the city of Brampton to cover for that default? I'd like to know why staff felt it was acceptable or necessary to pay out a penalty on a contract. And I have questions with regards to the nature of that contract. The member stated here today that at the time of the discussion, which took place, and I don't know the exact dates, although I do remember being a part of it, that details of that contract were requested and then provided. How do we know that that penalty clause was contemplated or agreed to beforehand and wasn't instead furnished after the fact in order to ensure that additional monies were paid, even though council had given clear direction that no additional monies are to be paid? And so I think that this will bear additional scrutiny. I would like to see, so in the form of a motion, I would like to see additional information brought forward to council in regard to the details of that contract. In the interest of transparency, and we all talk about transparency, I think that we should be able to see that detail. We need to know when the contract was provided to the member of council so that we have the exact dates and establish that that chronology, that timeline, to make sure that in fact we were required to pay the penalty in fact and legally. I want to make sure that that wasn't written later on so that somebody could take additional funds from the city, despite the fact that we had given instructions that no more funds should be paid out. A member of council does not have the authority to bind the corporation of the city of Brampton. There are consequences to having external staff or an external consultant in this case without the need to follow rules that we are all required to follow, that our staff are required to follow, and for that individual or individuals or organizations to be out there working, as a member of council said, against other members of council or the city. There's a long history on this, and we've talked about it ad nauseum, and I feel that I'm contributing to that right now at this moment. But I think it's clear that if members of the public are listening to this meeting or watching this meeting, that they understand very clearly that this is something that we have discussed and that we all fully understand, that the reasons for this come from an extensive background of conversations here at this committee and in council. Thank you.
I remember, just so going back before I go to the next speaker again, this was paid April 20th. The last this consultant for the 15,200 plus the interest, both of them were paid the same day, April 20th. So so we must have had the contract from this person to pay this. Am I correct?
Through the chair, based on my information, a copy of the contract was received on March 23rd.
March 23rd. Okay, so I guess Councilor Vicente wants, I guess we want to see the contract like he says, so I'll support that. And I remember when we did on November 4th, we never even talked about a contract. The only thing that was mentioned, outstanding invoices at the time, and outstanding invoices were paid. There was never something brought forward saying, hey, he has a contract, there's going to be penalties, this, and all that. So the contract could have been written after, like Councilor Vicente said, after November 4th, after we paid them. Okay. We have, yep, I think you have the staff online before we go. Jason? Was he on? He wanted to comment or? No? Okay. So, Councilor Williams?
Thank
The
you.
third time?
Yep, thank you. Through the chair. So to staff, did the payout of the contract come from a larger city budget, or did it come from the councillor's budget?
Through the chair, it came from the councillor's budget, and hence it is on the monthly statement for the councillor.
Right, okay, so it came from the councillor's budget, not a citywide consultant budget. So the councillor paid out of the council budget to pay out the contract that was written. Okay, and so I think, hey, it's great. I think it's great that we give everyone the information they want to see, see the contract, all of that stuff. I think it's wonderful because I believe in transparency and the residents have the right to know. But, I think we have to, I always have to ask what's really going on here, because right now, we've had questions asked, we've had them answered, and, a contract has to be honored. And the counselor, myself, did honor that contract and pay it out when it was supposed to, out of the counselor's budget, out of my counselor's budget. And the work was done. So, and also, if people are really upset, are concerned about how, consultants or how anybody on council is conducting themselves, we have an excellent tool, and that is called the Integrity Commissioner. So if anybody is concerned or upset and feels that people have violated the code, the Integrity Commissioner is there for us to get that information and also to hold people accountable if that's the case. So I just also want to remind everyone that we have that tool. That's what it's there for. Residents can use it as well. And I have no further questions or comments. Thank you.
Clarify, that our staff report, it did come from the councilor's budget, but still the councilor's budget is still taxpayers' money. Like mine and everyone else, and people go online and look at
Point
it.
of
We
privilege,
should be accountable and
point of privilege.
transparent.
I find that it's
Councilor
so
Vicente.
interesting that we're always trying to say it's taxpayers' money. That's right. It is taxpayers'
Councilor
money.
Williams,
And we're using taxpayers' money to do our
Councilor
job
Williams,
and
can
to
you put your
reach
name on the
them
board?
and connect with them.
Back on if you want.
I did point of privilege, okay?
Well,
Because I feel
well,
like
you
it's
gotta wait
a
to get
bit of
appointed.
attack to keep saying taxpayers' dollars. We are doing our job with our taxpayers' dollars. Okay? Thank you.
Councilor Vicente.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, the councillor is correct. These are taxpayer dollars. And it is the council that makes a decision on how the monies are to be spent in order to maintain a sense of order in how funds are used appropriately. It is true that we do have a tool at the City of Brampton in the form of the Integrity Commissioner to deal with complaints. But the Integrity Commissioner is limited to members of council and staff. It does not extend to an external body like a consultant, which brings us around once again to the issue at hand, that consultants are not permitted, and that we are going to be, I hope, endorsing this policy here today. And, I think that we have discussed this many, many times. And so there is nothing new here. And I hope that members of committee will do the right thing, and that this will be ratified at a future date of council. Thank you.
Thank you. So I know we have a motion here by Councilor Vicente. I think we should have also maybe schedule a workshop on how we could spend certain money, like on Facebook and our personal souvenirs and stuff like that. We got to look through these things and maybe set a certain role in the future. And this way, at least it details more how the policy, how we could spend the money. Or else we might, during the next budget, maybe we should just cut our budget in half. The whole idea was this, to be more accountable and transparent. But if we start getting out of line how money spent on Facebook and souvenirs and photographs and photography equipment and consultants, then, that's very unfair for the taxpayers' money. So Councilor Vicente has a motion. Mr. Clerk, everyone sees it on the screen?
They do, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Through the chair, before we vote, I do have
I'll get
on
back
the
to you,
board
Councilor Chemay, just before. Okay, Councilor Chemay Williams, last time, for the fourth time.
Thank you. Just a question through the chair to the clerk. I think you might be the best person to ask. According to the Code of Conduct, who does the Code of Conduct apply to?
Through you, Mr. Chair, as per the Municipal Act, the Code of Conduct for members of council applies only to members of council.
Does the Code of Conduct also apply to committee members? It also applies to anybody that the councillor hires or brings in their office?
Through you, Mr. Chair, technically it may not in the letter of the law. There are municipalities out there, and we have it on our work plan, is to develop a similar code of conduct for citizen appointments to committee. There is the notion of political staff that work for members of council in your offices. They are employees. They're not elected officials. So by the letter of the law, they're not subject to the council code of conduct, but that's why we've defined sort of an ethical framework to sort of try and bridge that gap. But actions that they do take reflect on the member of council, and those actions that reflect on a member of council may lead to a potential complaint to the Integrity Commissioner regarding indirectly a member of council, but that would be for the Integrity Commissioner to sort through, and I'm speaking in hypotheticals only.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Okay. So everyone's seen Councilor Vicenti's motion. All in favor, or who's opposed? Please put your name on the chat list. So we don't need a seconder, hey, Mr. Clerk? No.
So if no one opposes, that motion will carry, and then we can take the motions that are in black text above that, which are the staff report.
The staff report. Okay, so everyone, I guess everyone's in favor. I see no one opposed, so that carries. So we'll go on to.
Sorry, point of clarification. That was just for the motion in the red, or was it for the updated expense policy?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that was a vote on both at the end of the day. So both those motions, which is item 8.1 carried, the staff recommendations, and the additional motion by Councillor Vicente carried.
Okay, but just to be clear, sorry,
Okay.
I'm in the no for that one.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so there'll be no Councillor Chemain vote against the motion. Okay, so we'll go on to next one is the staff report, communication events, protocol, policies, procedures for council information. That's 8.2. Do any members have any questions regarding the staff report? If so, please use the chat function to add your name on the speakers list. It's 8.2?
Yes.
Yep. Councilor Vicente will move the report. So all in favor, yes, no one opposes? Seeing none, that carries. There are no opposition. 9.1, we already moved it forward. Okay, there's no objection. We have 10.1. Our next item is to defer the staff report regarding annual statements and expenses. So any members have any questions regarding the staff report? If so, please use the function. Add your name to the speakers list, please. Seeing none, that will be moved by Councilor Medeiros then. Okay, there are no other speakers. Oh, sorry, you added it. Councilor Vicente.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to staff, can staff just provide a very quick summary of what the term expense limits for members of council and mayor's office are?
Staff are just coming to the podium, members of committee.
Through the chair.
Councilor Vicente, sorry, can we just do the ourselves, the councilors? Because there's different
I'd
policies
like
in
it to be in the audio record, please.
Okay, because I figured, the mayor's has a whole different policies compared to us.
Yes.
Okay.
So through the chair, if I understand the question correctly, the question is around the actual budgeted amounts for the term of council expense.
Correct, just the total amount that's permitted, yeah.
So I'm just looking at the monthly statements that are posted online because they do have the term budget amount posted on them. So right now I'm seeing, and I'll have finance staff just verify this again, but based on what I'm seeing on the monthly statements, it is 679,544 for the term of council. But again, I think those are just for the 2 years, so we can provide an updated number later on. Yeah, so
Brett-
it's sorry, that's just for the 2 years. We've just gotten clarity. So we can provide a full number in terms of what the budgeted number is to members of committee subsequently.
Okay, very good, thank you.
So it's 649.
Sorry, no, Councillor, that is the budget for 2019 and 2020. The statement doesn't have the 2021 and 2022
Right.
numbers on it.
But we have a budget of 200,000 per councillor. Am I correct?
That includes your salary, staff salary, everything. That is the total budget for the council.
So, yeah, so we're way under spending, a lot of councillors, so we're way under. That's only the 2 years, though. That's good. Okay. You got everything you wanted, Councillor Vicente? You okay?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, Councillor Vicente, so everyone's okay with this, the report? Anyone opposed, please use the chat box. Seeing none, carries by Councillor Vicente, he moved it. Okay, no other speakers, thank you, I have a motion, okay. There are no opposed. Okay, our next is a councillor's question period. Any councillors have any questions? So I'm gonna ask staff a little bit more, couple of questions on this expense policy. So I just, I go through these policies here, and I'm looking at other places. If I buy a Toronto Star newspaper, it should detail Toronto Star. Like, everything should follow line by line, month by month. We have a full expense at the end, which you have to do a lot of math to figure out where it all goes. So if we could maybe line it month by month, would that be hard to do?
Through the chair, Peter, is it possible to bring up the monthly expense statement? Maybe
Not
we could just-
online, I'm saying just, when we print it every 3 months, I think this goes online, right?
It does. So there is a monthly statement online that has line by line for each invoice that's paid.
Right, because I see.
That is the monthly statements.
It's monthly by month?
It's month by month, line by line, based on each invoice that has been processed. So that is currently the monthly statement for each councillor.
Okay.
That's available online.
And there's like, when we go like outside souvenirs and for photography equipment and stuff, we're allowed under our budget?
Through the chair, correct. Currently, that is permitted. It is under standard, let me just tell you specifically. It is under 6.3.
Okay. I just find, when we start spending like $1,800 on photography equipment, then we spend another $2,300 on videos. If we got the equipment, why am I spending the $2,300 for someone to do videos for me? Okay. So I think we should review a lot of things, because the way the money's being spent, I think last term and stuff we didn't have this, so I know it's new, but to use this type of money this way, and it is taxpayers' money regardless, and we have to be a little bit more conscious how we use their money. Okay, so any other member have any questions?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Sorry?
Mr. Chair.
Yep.
Councillor Vicente.
Yep.
So just a question with regards to the conversation that we detailed here, and just to provide clarification to staff. If staff need any questions on the direction we provided today, will they approach members of council or members of this committee?
Through the chair, yes, but I think the resolution is fairly clear in terms of coming back to the governance committee.
Yeah, as I mentioned before, I think it's very important that we establish a very precise chronology of the discussions from when they first started at committee and council. When did the committee and therefore council direct staff to cease payments, and when was the first time this contract was provided? Because I'm recalling that at the time it was just invoices and that there was no contract. So if the contract was verbal and not on paper, but then afterwards a contract was provided after the fact, I'm not sure if that holds up under legal scrutiny, because after the fact one could, and I'm not saying that's what happened here, but one could write any contract one wishes. And it's unfair for staff to feel that they were under obligation to pay something even after they received clear direction from council to pay no more. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, I think we're gonna have to, we'll schedule something maybe with the clerk. We should go have a workshop and go through every policy before we start the next term and outline some things that we shouldn't allow in our expense policies, because I think things are getting out of hand here. And this way, we all agree as a council what we can do and what we can't do. So, okay. So, Mr. Clerk, any questions from the public?
Mr. Chair, there are not.
There is none, okay. So, our last item of business is adjournment, and our next meeting will be on Monday, November 23rd at 9:30. I have a motion by Councilor Medeiros to adjourn today's meeting. Thank you, everyone.